Hey everyone, and welcome back to the third edition of this 6-part series. I've now completed 1,500 push-ups, which means I'm exactly halfway there, so I'm super chuffed about that, and still going strong-ish. My shoulders aren't, but the rest of me is doing okay. So last edition I spoke about the cancer in my family, what my mum went through, and how I found that, and I put a couple of corrections into the description below. My mum sort of, when she watched the video back, said, "Oh, this was actually what happened there, and this is what happened there." So I've put those corrections into the into the description below, so have a look there if you'd like to get a bit more of an updated version. And today, as promised, I'm going to talk about my dad, his mental health struggles, and the effects that had on me. So my dad, I just want to sort of add in here just before I get going. These are all my stories. It's just effectively my story about the struggles that I've overcome, and I'm just sort of setting the background. And I think it's important to know everyone's got their own story, their own background, and what you see doesn't necessarily mean you know exactly their story. It's something always to remember. So, my story with my father. A couple of years after my mum's cancer, my dad's mental health wasn't going wonderful. He was suffering from depression. Both my mum and I knew this. He was still working at the time, and I just remember one evening my mum and dad had an argument. It wasn't a major one, I thought, but they'd had an argument, and Mum came and got me a little while later and asked me if I could help try and find Dad, because she couldn't find him anywhere, and obviously due to his mental health we were concerned. So I grabbed a torch and went looking around the garden. It was dark, it was a sort of November evening, November evening. I remember it being quite slippy on the patio outside, and I started hunting around the garden for him while Mum rang someone who knew him, I think, to sort of get an update and just to see if they had heard from him or anything on those lines. So I started looking around the garden. My parents got a couple of acres. They live in the middle of the country, so it's quite a big garden to be looking around in the pitch black. And I came across a lump on the ground about halfway around the garden. My heart sank. I immediately thought the worst. I went running over to this lump, and it luckily was some blankets and some mesh things that my parents put over their vegetable patch to protect the vegetables during the frost. So obviously I was elated, and started making my way back to the house, and on the way back I saw another lump and didn't think anything of it because of what had happened last time. As I got closer to this lump, I realised it was my dad, curled up on the floor. I went running over to him, and he was barely conscious, and all he was mumbling was, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." He obviously didn't recognise who I was or could tell anything. I sprinted over to the kitchen from where I was in the garden and banged on the window trying to get my mum's attention, who was still on the phone. I shouted through the window, I found him, he's unconscious, he's outside. To which she came rushing out and checked him over with me, and went straight back in and called the ambulance to get them to come out. While she was on the phone to the ambulance, she asked me to stay with him, and then called to me to try and find out exactly what he'd taken, what he'd done, why was he in that condition. And I went to, my dad's got a workshop, he does some silversmithing and loves doing it, and that's where he had been. So I went rummaging around his workshop and found his open medical bag, and some, I think it was diamorphine capsules, and I think I found the syringe next to them as well. So I went rushing back and told Mum what he had taken, and then stayed with him until the ambulance arrived. Now, I remember that when I went to get the ambulance crew, I went running around the side of the house and Mum could stay with Dad, and they understandably, I now know, I didn't know at the time, they weren't rushing. They were going very slowly into the incident. I found it extremely frustrating and kept shouting at them to hurry up, which I'm sure they understand and expect, but it was just getting more and more for me at that moment. So when they got round there, they just basically took care of him, and the long story short, they took him round to the back of the ambulance, got him into the ambulance, I think they stretchered him round or carried him, but I can't remember how they got him there, but he wasn't conscious enough to walk or anything along those lines. And my mum got in the ambulance with him to go off to the hospital, and I went back into my parents' home, and Mum had asked me to call Nana, my mum's mum, to let her know about what had happened. It wasn't an easy call. It was a difficult call because she was extremely upset on the phone and I wasn't, and I think it probably was the adrenaline rushing around my body at the time. But as soon as I finished that phone call, I remember thinking to myself, why am I not upset like Nana was? Why am I not crying? What's wrong? Is it because I'm adopted and I don't have that link to him? And so many thoughts go through your head as to why you're acting differently to how other people act in those circumstances. My brother came home from work a little way later on, and I told him, and he panicked and went through lots of different emotions. And again, I thought I didn't react the same. I didn't feel like I reacted the same. Anyway, they got him to hospital, and a couple of days later, I think after he had seen someone as well, he was released. He was a bit sheepish around us and apologised, but that was literally just a I'm sorry, nothing else. And Mum was great. She spoke to me throughout the process, and she spoke to us and made sure we were all right. But as a child, so I would have been 14 at the time, I suppose, you can't help, 14 or 15, you can't help but start thinking, is it something I've done? Is it something that I've said? Could I have changed the situation so that it didn't happen in any way or shape or form? And you start beating yourself up about it. Now, Dad's depression didn't get much better. It carried on. We thought he was better, but it carried on being pretty bad for a while. Alcohol, substance abuse was there as well, which was very difficult to see or understand. And I suppose you kind of think, well, we're over the worst. He wrote both my brother and I a letter stating how sorry he was, and it's pages long. It was the most heartfelt letter my dad had ever written to us, and also had so much emotion in it, which my dad's never been a very emotional person to us, so that really put me in my seat. A couple of years later, I went off to university, and I had that lovely telephone call telling me that he had attempted to take his life again. I don't remember much about that, which is strange. I think perhaps because I wasn't there. I don't remember how I dealt with that one so well, even though obviously it's more recent. One thing I do know is that I did struggle at university after that a bit, and I did start taking substances more than I should, and it's my way of escapism, and I think I distanced myself a bit more from my parents, and then started going through in my head, is it something I've done, is it because of this, blaming myself, internalising it a lot, and obviously it wasn't anything I had done, it was just their struggles, but just not easy to deal with. So those are the situations which really massively affected my mental health. Like I said, I questioned, was it because I was adopted that I didn't feel the same way as other people. I noticed a lot of people around me got very teary and upset, and I didn't, and I beat myself up about that. I beat myself up about something I could have said. I had lots of these thoughts going around in my head, and then I started beating myself up about the fact that I was not dealing with the situation properly. I wasn't looking after my parents the way I should be. I wasn't going home as often as I should be and making sure they're okay. I remember after university I made a deal with my dad that I'd give up smoking if he gave up drinking. That was equally difficult. I don't think I actually managed to give up smoking, but he did give up drinking. I suppose that's where I want to lead on with this. Since that, both my parents are fairly fit. My dad's in his 80s and my mum's getting close to those ages now. But they are, for their age, are doing pretty well. And I asked them both if they could record themselves doing 5 push-ups. They both attempted the floor push-ups and failed miserably, so I got them to do incline push-ups, and they've actually managed to do 5 incline push-ups. So I was super proud of them for doing it, because of their age and having never been able to do this. Although my dad did turn around and say when he was a lot younger he used to be able to do clap push-ups, but I didn't expect that from an 80-year-old. But I'll show you the videos now. So thanks for watching. I do understand this one's been quite a lot longer. You can see that my parents are doing very well. They're both willing to engage in this. I will be interested to know their thoughts on this, and yours. If there are any questions about what I've said, or any further thoughts about it, please do put them in the comments below and I'll come back to you. I think I started this by explaining this is my story and this is what's affected me. In the next episodes I'll talk about what I did to then combat my feelings and my own, the way it did harm my mental health, and the things that I do, the things that other people have done, and the support that's out there. And I'd just like to really reiterate that if you do require support, or this has been triggering to you in any way, shape or form, if you look down in the description below, you'll see that there's some links to some local support, some support charities and networks around the country which are brilliant and can offer you loads of advice, to include Movember and Cancer Research UK. Thanks everyone, and I look forward to speaking to you next time.